to Oblivion Community Centre is the collaboration album between Conor Oberst and Phoebe Bridgers. It's a bit of an out of nowhere release, to be honest. I don't think I expected this one to come out. If it was announced, I completely missed the announcement, but it is a collaboration that makes total sense. Phoebe Bridgers, acoustic singer-songwriter who had an album a few years back which was pretty alright, and also the veteran singer-songwriter Conor Oberst, who's been at it for years upon years. His work with Bright Eyes is pretty good, and he's had his own solo material as well, which was also pretty damn good too. One of those collaborations that seems too easy of a fit, like I guess in the way that, oh, these two artists are so similar that coming together it would just make something that you'd expect and not really, you know, excite you in any particular way. But actually it kind of flips that upside down and ends up being a collaboration that you would expect, but for the right reasons. These two singers come together really well. I like their interplay. The way they harmonize is really nice too across nearly every track. They just play off each other really, really nicely, and most of these tracks are just well written acoustic indie folk, indie rock jams that I don't have really any issues with. As you'd expect as well, lyrically this is a pretty well written album too. Some really nice storytelling across this album, like on the opening track, and also just some really introspective details that they both come through with on pretty much every track here. They talk about their emotions quite a lot as well, in quite an interesting way, especially on tracks like Sleepwalkin, where they're basically just talking about, you know, their mundane life and just saying like, is this having fun? Is this what it is? Like, you know, are we just doing nothing and just like walking around asleep, not doing anything with ourselves, just kind of going by, coasting on with the motions, not really living life to the full. But I think it's a very relatable thought process that a lot of people go through, especially when they have like really dead-end jobs and not really fulfilling their potential. They're just kind of doing the same thing every day. It's the same routine, the same shit over and over and over. Service Road is a track where Conor is dealing with the death of his brother and how Conor feels as though he probably could have done more prior to the death of his brother, in terms of like helping him, but not only that, but just being there for him. Conor has stated before as well that he didn't really get on too well with his brother, so there was a bit of like animosity between them or something like that, but still, like, even still, losing your brother just causes so much pain and so much grief, which he displays on this track as well. I do really like the opening line as well, where it's like, you should really call your brother. There's a picture here where he can't stand, which I'm sort of interpreting as Conor alluding to the idea that, yeah, when he was alive, you know, he had pictures of his brother, but that doesn't really mean anything if you're not there for the person or they're not a part of your lives and you're not regularly contacting them. There's a picture here where he can't stand because you're not willing to have him stand here with you and actually have him in your life, which that's the way I interpret that line anyway. You could interpret it other ways as well. The track deals with grief, but it's also just Conor explaining like things that were going on in his life before his death. You know, he got evicted, things were just going so sour in his life, and he ended up drinking himself to death. Like, I feel as though Conor here is just kind of telling it as it is, as opposed to kind of putting his own emotions in the way of a tragedy, which isn't necessarily a bad thing to do, but I feel like he just wants to kind of step away from it and just tell it as it is. My City is a song that tackles love and, you know, anxiety kind of getting in the way of things and kind of wrecking a relationship. I do like this track though because they're singing together throughout the track, so you could sort of see it as like a relationship going on, like they're singing to each other and they're sort of like laying off all their feelings and thoughts. And it's a nice little way of like getting the two sides of the story, as opposed to just getting like one singer singing about their experience and you don't really get the other side to it. Really nice little dynamic. I think it works really quite well. And yeah, throughout the album, you know, they just work together so well at singing. Their interplay between each other is really good. There are just a few moments on the album where I'm just not really that interested in what's going on musically. Like I say, it's exactly what you'd expect between both of them, and it works well for the most part, but it's not like the most inventive sound or anything like that. Like, you could hear this sort of thing done elsewhere and maybe even better. They do try changing things up on Exception to the Rule though, and that really doesn't work well at all, I don't think. There's these like blocky synths that come through. They sound so out of place and so gross to listen to be honest. It's a really weird section in the album. It comes right in the middle of the album too. It just sort of feels completely out of place to my ears. It just completely halts the album, you know, right in the middle section. You just come to a standstill. You're just like, what? And then once it's over, you're just like, okay, I'm gonna keep going. And some lyrics here and there are a little bit melodramatic, I must say. Especially on tracks like Chepaseek, I think it's pronounced. The opening line to that song is just a bit eye-rolling. Chesapeake, sorry, is the name of the track, and the opening line is like, the world will not remember us when we're old and tired, oh, blowing on the embers of a little fire, oh. Just a bit of an eye-rolling moment, to be honest. But yeah, overall, I think this is a good album. This is a pretty solid, good release. I kind of feel like if you just love that singer-songwriter, indie folk, indie rock music, you're just gonna fall in love with this, because it just gives you exactly what you're gonna want from an album like this. Great songwriters coming together to make a good album. It's a nice collaboration for sure. I'm gonna go 7 out of 10. Definitely check it out if you haven't already, and let me know your thoughts on this album here if you have listened to it. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Goodbye.